The van is now your home. It's also your office, sometimes your kitchen, and at last resort, your bedroom. Success on the road is making it home alive. The rest is just frosting on the music brownie.
Commandments of touring in a van.
After at least 35 tours over the last 20 years, I'm going to tell you what I know. This van, this sacred van, it's the center of which everything else orbits. So you got to keep it chill and always on the positive. That means no fights in the van. No phone calls in the van unless it's an emergency. And even then, you got to ask everybody, and please keep it short. Keep the private stuff private. The van might look like a mobile army rat's den, but it's a Zen center. The first time I toured Europe, I was with Chuck Prophet, and I was riding in the Sprinter with him and the band. And the band was full of ringers, super professional team. And what was happening in there was everybody was mostly listening to headphones or reading. It was the opposite of exciting. Nothing was happening in there. But amid all that nothing happening, something opened my eyes. So we were on the ferry to Dover when a band member opens up to me that they're going to be returning to San Francisco to sleep on a couch because they were in between apartments and their relationship was on the rocks. And this musician wasn't some deadbeat. That same year, they had just played drums on a top 40 hit, and it dawned on me then that the van was boring because the musicians were just keeping it professional. The road is not professional in the same way that the 9-to-5 life is, but it doesn't mean that there's not rules. So here's some more. Let's talk about the front two seats. The front two seats of the van, those are the most important, obviously. Everybody in the band is an equal with the exception of this rule. I call this the Han Solo Chewbacca dynamic. Now, the driver's got the most important job of the whole mission, and don't let the singer tell you different. In my band, nobody drives more than 3 hours unless they wanna, but most of the time, we're just gonna switch drivers up after one length of an album, and the driver chooses the album. The driver always chooses the music. And driver, in turn, you got to keep it only to the front two speakers. Don't force everybody in back to listen to Bread's Greatest Hits or S Club 7 or whatever fast food podcast you got to hear that day. Now, next in that hierarchy is the Chewbacca position. Van companies like to call it the passenger seat for whatever reason. Should you accept this role, you also accept the role of navigator. Don't leave it up to the GPS. Speak it. Nobody wants to hear that robot GPS. You signed up for the roller coaster, not the merry-go-round. And if everything is going smooth, you're not paying attention. Don't smoke in the van. No farting. I know this sounds funny, but it's not funny when it happens. If it does happen, I mean, it's going to happen. Just own up to it. Let everybody have a laugh and know what you did, and then roll the window down right away. Don't wrestle in the van. Don't go number 3 in the van. I'm not expanding on that. Just don't. And never let your gas tank go below 1/4 empty. Because if you run out of gas, you risk missing sound check, or even worse, you find yourself on the side of the road at 3 a.m. with a van full of gear and a bunch of stinky passengers. Anything can happen at that point. You could get attacked by a werewolf. It happened to me once, and now I'm a werewolf. Next one. Sounds simple. Don't speed. Safety is far more beneficial to your career, and the 15 minutes that you're going to make up for in time aren't really going to make a difference to the sound person anyways. Don't let your ego convince you that it's worth having 1,000 pounds of amplifiers and t-shirt boxes smashing on top of you should the van flip over. Yeah, it's that serious, and yeah, it happens. I can count 3 bands on the top of my head that I know that this happened to. One of them sadly lost a member. So on that note, my advice is avoid driving overnight. Sometimes your agent might have routed the tour that you got to do overnight, so you got to get a head start on the next day, but you fix this in the planning stages. Your safety is not worth the booking agent's 15%. Waking up early is a way better odds of safety. If time is tight, just call the venue, let them know you're going to be late, and if you have to, skip sound check. Just tell them your greedy agent couldn't make the day off working the routing, and it's better to skip the sound check than risk a drunk driver the night before. And most importantly, don't let that drunk driver be you. Never, under any circumstances, drive drunk or even buzzed. So I don't drink anymore, but when I did, we'd just flip a coin to see who the driver was going to be that night. It's a simple and fair way to do it. On top of that, if you did get a DUI, good luck touring Canada. Don't even have open containers of alcohol in the van. If you're going to travel with alcohol, just keep it in the back with all the gear closed. And if a cop pulls you over, just always be honest. What do you have to hide anyway? Don't give other bands a bad name by trying trying to sneak around some stupid booze. Just say, yeah, we have an unopened case of beer in the back, or whatever. If you're gonna be a rock and roll, wild person, whatever, 24 hours a day, you're never gonna make it out there. I mean, the reason the Doors didn't tour that much is because Jim Morrison was too much of a liability. And I think more often in the 21st century, touring bands know not to be ridiculous anywhere but on stage. At this point in my band, hardly anybody drinks anymore anyways, and my advice is that's the way you should go. When you run into a label or a business associate out there, you want to present the best version of yourself possible, not the drunkest. So when you're out there on tour, your peers aren't only other bands. They're also truckers, bartenders, and hotel staff. And when it comes to hotels, just like that van is your nexus point, the hotel is the nexus point for everybody who works at the hotel. And maybe it's your first time seeing them, but they see bands all the time. A hotel employee knows even before you open your mouth if you're going to be a nightmare or not. So just follow that saying, you can catch more flies with honey than you can with. For instance, there's this drummer, and I toured with him, and he was always super kind to check in, and after we loaded out to the room, he'd go back to the front desk, and he'd ask permission to use the pool after hours. Now, this drummer's vibe, it checked out as mature and responsible. He'd state that he needed to do it for his muscles after performing, and most of the time he'd come back to the room and say, I just had a swim. He really did need it for his muscles, by the way. Being polite to the hotel staff is always going to work in your favor, so here's a rule. If you reserve a room online, but you're going to be late, just give them a heads-up call. And by the time you check in, they're going to know your name, and they're going to be happy to see you. At that point, that's when you're going to ask for a late checkout in the morning. You are polite to them, and they're going to be polite to you and back. My experience is that in-person is better for big asks with the hotel because just like you, they're working hard at their job. And just like you, nobody's getting rich out here. Probably you got more in common with them than you don't. I bet a lot of the time you even like the same bands. The golden rule is simple. Treat people how you want to be treated. It's not a war, it's a dance. Now the other spot besides the hotel that you're going to run into your peers is the truck stop. And yeah, you're going to meet other bands at the truck stop, but I'm talking about truckers. Like everybody else, they see bands all day, every day. It's nothing new or weird to a trucker, so just don't be a clown. Truckers make our whole country work, and without them, there'd be no America to tour. One time I was filling up a soda, and this hilarious trucker says to me, "What do I gotta do? Call my lawyer to figure out how this soda machine works? I'm just a steering wheel holder." And this is why truckers are your peers, because we're all steering wheel holders out there. When you get to the club, you're just a t-shirt store. And for that 1 hour a day, you're a musician. Now, one of the great things about truckers is they're sage-wise people when it comes to road conditions and travel advisories. If the road ahead looks sketch, just ask a trucker. Did you come from that direction? Is it safe to keep going? I was on the edge of a blizzard outside of Spokane, Washington, headed into the Bitterroot mountain range on I-90. It was near sunset. The trucker said, "Don't go up there unless you got chains." I've driven in tornadoes, blizzards, ice storms, over frozen bridges, high winds in the northern plains, and it's always been truckers who advise me to pull off. Ice in the mountains is one of the scariest things you never want to experience. Also, most truckers love music, and they're happy to chat with us. Again, you're going to find you have more in common with these people once you start talking to them. The road is a whole ecosystem of dotted lines and roller dogs and good times and great people. So when you're out there, you just got to throw away the mythology of what TV movies have fed you about being in a band. Whatever fantasy lifestyle you're anticipating is not going to be there. That mythology that you see in movies or whatever, that recklessness that you see in music videos, not that anybody watches music videos anymore, but the wild times, those have nothing to do with music. It's all just branding. Branding with some label did to make people buy stuff. And you're a musician, which means you don't have any money to buy stuff anyways. Now, on stage, well, branding is a whole different story. I knew a runner for an M&M show when he was on the D12 tour who had to empty out all the Jack Daniels bottles and refill them with apple juice. And I also had this sound person tell me one time, he was a sound guy for a big metal band. I won't say the name of the big metal band, but they're a stadium band. And he said that the huge stack of amplifiers, 10 amplifiers, are totally empty except for one of them that's got amps in it. It's all showbiz out there. Instead of letting your ego tell you, I'm a superstar, just ask yourself all the time, am I being professional? Am I being professional. And that's what's going to make you a professional, which is the goal, right? Going on the road is going to be the bachelor's, master's, and PhD of this business, and the root comes from not sweating the small stuff, good or bad. So to wrap it up, there's going to be so many things out there that you never predicted, but I promise if you follow these rules, there's going to be more good things than bad things. So tonight, get some sleep, wake up, not too early, hug your bandmates, and get out there ready to bring some frickin' joy into those dive bars. The Happiness Playlist is my whole book about music.